Hello, everyone. My name is John-Andrew Morrison, and the Lucille Lortel Theatre Foundation is celebrating the return of live theater with the magnificent Jocelyn Bioh. Jocelyn, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. How are
I'm
you?
I'm so good. I am so excited to speak to you today. I have to tell you, before we even start, your work has the ability to make me laugh like I have no home training. And so I'm a huge fan, and I'm so excited to get to speak with you today. One thing that I'm noticing is your work is really ushering theater back in this wonderful way. Of course, Merry Wives at Shakespeare in the Park for the public, Nollywood Dreams at MCC, and even Schoolgirls, the African Mean Girls play, which was such a hit at the Lortel, is opening back the Goodman. So this must be really exciting. How does it feel to be ushering audiences back and knowing that your work is playing such a wonderful part in this reemergence?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's great. I think it's been such an intense and kind of devastating, really, year and a half. We're still kind of in the throes of the pandemic, of course, with COVID and its various remixes. So, there's still a lot to work through, but I think um, I feel so. Well, one thing that I love to do is just to make people laugh. I really do enjoy it. It really is something that brings me a lot of joy. Um, and so to be able to do that in such a lovely, open way with, Merry Wives and then eventually with Nollywood. And I thankfully did get to go to Chicago and see Schoolgirls
Oh,
in this new
fantastic.
reopening. Yeah. And, it's not lost on me what a joy it is for people to, be able to come into a room after being away from people for so long and to have an experience of laughing together and,
Yes.
experiencing, joy together.
So tell us about Merry Wives. I thought the production was just delightful, and I'm trying my best to come back. But how did it come to be? How did the adapting that come to be? Did you go to them? Did they come to you? How did?
No, they totally, yeah, they meaning, Saheem, the director, came to me. He is now the associate artistic director at the Public.
Right, right.
That new role happened over the course of the quarantine year, and as legend goes, Mary Wives was actually the fourth option. Um,
Oh, okay.
they had three other plays in line that they were thinking would be part of the Shakespeare in the Park season. And for whatever reason, each, play kept getting picked off slowly. And then Merry Wives became, the like one. And so he called me and said, listen, I read this play and I feel like I heard it in like a, West African dialect. He was specifically talking about this scene where the two wives discover these letters that have been written to them
Right.
by the same guy, and they're basically the same letter. He said, I just heard it, like, and I just feel like it would happen at like a hair braiding salon, and yada yada. He had a very clear vision of that scene in particular, and so he was like, listen, it's a comedy, and I want it to be African. There's only one person I'm going to call, and I was like, here we go. So when I read it, I had a very clear understanding of like what, Saheem saw. And I was like, I definitely think I can do this. And so, yeah, from basically March of this year to now was me writing it and working on it. It came together months before the world ended up getting to see it. So it was quick. It was a quick process. But and I'd never adapted anything before, but I think it was a really fun challenge to be able to kind of put all facets of myself into, a Shakespearean text and a really Shakespearean world,
Yeah.
and still make it feel like fun and fresh, and new, in a way that nobody ever encountered it before.
Nollywood Dreams. When they announced that one, I was so happy. I was fortunate enough to see a reading of it maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and I walked
Mhm.
out of there going like, produce this right now, right now. So I'm so glad it's getting its off Broadway premiere. So just tell us about this show and what audiences can expect with Nollywood Dreams.
Yeah, Nollywood Dreams is just, it's a play that's really dear to my heart because it's actually one of the first plays that I wrote that I feel like is very true to my voice. I wrote it even 5 years before I ever wrote Schoolgirls.
Okay.
So it's a really, it's an old play, old but new play. And it's set in Nigeria in the early 1990s. And it's essentially about a young girl who wants to break into the Nollywood film industry, which is the nickname for the West African film industry. And so she goes to an open call for a big movie that's coming up. And then her and a sort of fading Nollywood actress go head to head for the lead role. And, you know, comedy and drama ensue. But I think couched in there is also like, you know, the immigrant story, the understanding of like what it's like to chasing the American dream and what happens when you chase that, but the reality of it is not, you know, what
Right.
one thought it would be. You know, I wanted to keep adding to the perspective of like what immigrants go through and how their goals in trying to attain even, you know, citizenship or status. I mean, the play is largely set in Nigeria, but there is a lot of conversation about a couple of the characters who did try, you know, to make it, you know, in
Yeah.
America and how difficult that was. And so, you know, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the entertainment industry. And so I think it's also kind of like a fun, you know, industry comedy too, you know, especially if you're somebody who works in the business in any way. I think you'll really, they'll appreciate the kind of nods to like the oddities of our business. But I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be so fun. You know,
Yeah.
we unfortunately had to shut down in March of last year because we were
Right.
about to
Right.
open
Right.
the show. We were about to go into tech actually for the show. And then, you know, the shutdown happened. And, you know, we thought, of course, we'd only be shut down for 2 months. And then it was
Right.
nearly 2 years. So
Yeah.
we're really excited to be coming back. And we've got the whole cast being able to come back. So it's going to be a really exciting time.
What does it feel like to be able to share African culture with American audiences? And has there been anything that's been surprising or delightful in the reaction to your work?
You know, it's interesting because like I think I wasn't always being true to my voice as a writer for many years, especially when I was in grad school.
Yeah.
This is not what I was writing at all. Like I was writing bad, you know, kitchen sink dramas, you know, like they were just terrible. Um, and it was only years after I got out of school where I really kind of like sat with myself and I had a clear understanding of like who I was as a writer, what I wanted to do, and if I could be brave enough to do that.
Mm,
And the journey to getting produced was really long because there's not a lot of people who even can understand the concept of an African story that is couched in joy. Like, I think they're so used to the
yes.
narrative being about, you know, very singular things of war, rape, struggle, strife, you know,
Yeah.
famine, you know, you name it, which is, of course, you know, true of, you know, some, you know, countries, but not of the entire continent, not of every single person who lives there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so being able to kind of add to the conversation of how the diaspora is reflected feels really important to me. And then my voice naturally lives in a comedic place and like
Yeah.
embracing that and owning that is also, you know, really exciting because I think I could try to, you know, hide that from myself, but I'm it would be unnatural. It would be a very unnatural, unnatural choice. So, you know, I think what I most enjoy is that people are starting to get it now.
Yeah.
People have this understanding of like I love that people know that when they're coming to engage with, you know, one of my works that they know it's gonna like at least large scale be joyful. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, not a bad way to have your your name and your work affiliated together. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I kind of want to to talk about, wrap up with that whole idea of joy. Even when I think of something like Schoolgirls, there was so much joy and celebration of like Black women and African culture. And there's something radical, I feel, in celebrating Black joy. There's something really wonderful in highlighting that. And so can I ask you to speak a little bit about joy and celebration that comes up in your work, and why that is important to you?
Yeah, I think exactly what you just said is that, you know, Black joy is also an act of rebellion too, because historically it's something that has been tried to be snatched from us every single time in every single aspect of our lives. And so to be able to kind of like own that and kind of throw that in people's faces, um, is exciting, because like that is also an act of rebellion. I mean, it also doesn't mean that like the stories that I'm telling are, frivolous in any
No,
way.
they have pathos. They
Yeah,
absolutely do.
yeah. I always say, like, there's a bottom, I think, to every play. And that's kind of where the joy kind of springs off from, is like that we always have this like very solid foundation of like what the story, is, and what we're trying to tell and what we're trying to come across. I mean, even though Schoolgirls is like, largely funny, it's still a play about colorism,
Oh, very
and
much
and,
so.
and the way it can affect, young Black women. So
Yeah.
and then, Merry Wives, there's still a whole element. There's a newer element that we added, of a same-sex relationship,
Right.
and
Right.
there's obviously a lot of homophobia within various, Black cultures. And so being able to try to like seamlessly put that in and show that it's a story of acceptance and families accepting,
Right.
their children for who they are, is important too. So, and all of those kind of serious things can be wrapped up and couched in joy as well. So, that is really important to me. There's a quote that I read years ago when I was in grad school. I don't know who said it, but I steal it I say it all the time. So sorry to whomever I stole it from, but it's so brilliant, because it says comedy is just a funny way of being serious, and I'm like, that's it, and if I feel like that's my kind of thesis statement that I operate on with every single play that I write.